truth hurts. The truth hurts.
Well, hello and welcome to the first episode of Wayne Carey, The Truth Hurts. I'm alongside the man they know as the King. Wayne, how do we get here?
I'm not sure I'm known as the King. Got nicknamed the King, but it's a really good question because it was only a few weeks ago. Obviously, out of the media. Everyone knows why I was out of the media. The so-called white bag saga at Crown Casino, so no longer on Channel 7 or Triple M, and honestly thought that can I walk away completely, and would I feel content if I walked away completely out of the media spotlight? And I guess the question that I asked myself a couple of weeks ago was, well, you are out of the media spotlight, but now you can actually tell your truth. And given that I've been in the paper more in the last few weeks and I have probably over the last year, other than the so-called white bag saga, which, by the way, had nothing in it, which hasn't been said or even shown a photo of, or there hasn't been a picture of anything. But I had a really emotional period after all of that stuff come out in the media. And when I say that, it was because of how it doesn't – people have got to understand that type of reporting doesn't affect me anymore. I've built a wall and I've built a mask that is almost unbreakable. But who it does affect, it affects my 17-year-old, my 8-year-old, my 4-year-old. It affects the mothers of those children, who I'm very, very close with. It affects their families, their aunties, their uncles, their nans, their pops. It affects all of those people. So I sat down and had a really emotional period and thought, how can I give my voice to my truth for the first time in my life? And when I say that, and what you wouldn't know, Anton, and what a lot of people don't know is, as a young kid, I was a really, really emotional, shy kid. And I used to bawl my eyes out. First day of school, I pooped my pants, went home with it, didn't clean it at school. It just went really stale. Got home and cleaned it out. Once I got home, I think I got a smack for pulling my pants on my first day. So I was really an insecure kid, and I was really insecure until the age of 13. And it was when I left. It was when I left home. And when I say this story, or when I talk about this type of stuff, and I do on a corporate level a little bit now, I don't blame any of my behaviour on my upbringing. And I had a very indifferent upbringing, but I don't blame behaviour on any of that, because a lot of people had a lot tougher upbringing than I did. But what it does highlight to me at 13, when I left home at 13 and moved in with my brother, I built a wall and I built a mask. And then that mask only grew over time. And then I moved to Melbourne at 16. I'm living with a group of young guys in Melbourne, in a house with no one really looking after. We had a cook and we had a cleaner that would come in every now and then, but really, and then 3 or 4 years later, I'm the captain of North Melbourne, and so everything happened really quickly. I was a really emotionally immature person, and really had no time to really gather who I was. And as I said, I built this wall, I built this mask, and it was a mask and a wall that was like, no one's ever going to hurt me. And then you retire from footy and you go into the media, and once again you're muzzled with what you can and can't say, and you train yourself how to speak in the media and what you should or shouldn't say. And obviously in the new world that we live in, the woke world, political correctness, all of those things that, we're hamstrung by in mainstream media. I thought this is the first opportunity that I have since the age of 16, and being in the public eye from that time, that I have the opportunity to actually speak my truth for the first time and really let people know what I'm thinking, and not just about football, but all things life. I've had a lot to do in the last 6 months in and around men's health, and not only men's health, but all people's health, and really looking forward. And I've delved into that deeply, and being someone that has had to deal with a lot off field, and I guess I guess, a scrutiny that not too many people in this country. There are some.
I mean, we've spoken about that, and that's part of why I think you were considering, and a lot of people probably don't know this, we'd spoken about this, you were considering stepping away previous to that anyway. I mean, you maybe didn't have a whole lot of years left in what we describe as mainstream media. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I thought I would step away from Channel 7 at the start of this year or the end of last year anyway, because it really wasn't something that I was totally enjoying, but knew that you could just go there on autopilot. You knew what you had to say, something that you did since you were 16. And really this is a very different feel for me, because you're coming in here, you're actually, like I said, you're actually speaking your truth for the first time. You're not being told what to say. There are no guidelines on what you can and can't say. Clearly, I have views very different, I know, to you. You and I have worked together for a fairly long time with the age.
That's certainly right.
And we do have a different view, and a lot of people have a different view to me. I don't sit left, I don't sit right. I think I sit. I always say I sit common sense. Some people would disagree with that, but I'm looking forward to speaking all those things that I truly believe in, and whether that is around football or whether that's around any sport or whether it's some politics. I follow a little bit of it, believe it or not, but I think I'm fairly well read on a lot of topics, and I'm looking forward to delving into all of that.
I know part of what your motivation here is vulnerability, and we want to talk about the truth. And there's probably be a few, cynics or critics out there, as you've had right throughout your career, in regards to what's brought us to this point. I mean,
don't you love cynics and critics? I mean, I've lived with cynics and critics my whole career, and some of those cynics and critics are now friends. There's been people in the media over my career when I played. Not so much when I played, because a lot of that was positive. But then when you retire, and yes, I put my hand up. The one thing that I've never done is I've never made excuses for mistakes that I've made. I've taken ownership of them. But a lot of my critics have now become, some of them became colleagues, and then some of them became friends. And so if I was to hold a grudge against those critics and cynics, I wouldn't talk to anyone. There's a lot of dingbats out there that sit on social media and will have a view on what I do and don't say. I think that sit back, have a listen, and like I said, you'll have your negatives and you'll have your positives. But I'm looking forward to giving what is, as we've said, my truth, and can't wait to continue to do it. And there's plenty going on in the world of footy right now, and I've got my eye still across football, as I have everything else. But there's a bit happening. Before
we do move on to the footy stuff, because I know you've got some really strong views on your professional situation. How has this affected you? Because you talk about the wall that you put up, but I feel like you've maybe got a different perspective from the conversations we've had, because it is a big change. I mean, footy was your life as a player. It was your life as a commentator. Do you understand why Seven and Triple M made the decisions they did?
Of course I do. I think, there's a lot of, and once again, that's just people out there that are going to be cynical about why I'm here now, and whether I'm not going to sit here and pot Channel 7 or pot Triple M or pot The Age, obviously, and unless they say something that I disagree with, obviously, or people on there sit on the fence and don't have a strong opinion, or people stick up for people just for the sake of sticking up for people that that I guess don't deserve, or that they've made a comment that don't deserve to be stuck up for, or and that's just because of their muzzled approach to what they can and can't say. So that's what I'm looking forward to. It's been a weight lifted off the shoulders. There's plenty. We're going to obviously have plenty of interviews during this podcast. We'll have some very interesting people that we can have a chat to. But as I said, I'm looking forward to just learning how to speak my truth as well under a microphone. I think I'll get better as we go. But it's going to be a journey, and I hope plenty of people come along for the ride.
So many talking points out of the weekend. One that's just blown up has been Jason Horne-Francis. Of course, a huge last quarter against the Western Bulldogs, 11 disposals, some amazing shots after the game of his conversation with Ken Hinkley, and that led to these comments from Kane Cornes on Sunday Footy Show.
And he's right. I mean, the treatment from some of the North Melbourne supporters towards Horne-Francis has been disgraceful and continues to be disgraceful, and they've got to have a look at themselves as well. He's left the footy club now. The North Melbourne fans can let it go and focus on what is there now, and all the clips on social media that people keep clipping up to highlight some deficiencies in his game needs to stop. So, as you said, there was a line.
Now, the conversation from there has just gone from Kane Corns to David King to Nathan Buckley. I love Kane, but he's got to take some responsibility for that, doesn't he?
Everyone, I feel really sorry for Jason Horne-Francis. I really do. And right from the start, the number one draft pick, I think the pressure that was put on him, and it always is. I always think back to Jack Watts. I think the pressure that, he was put under. The game was very different back then. You could really intimidate your opponent when you're on the ground. And I think what he went through was actually horrendous and maybe even ruined him before he even started. But, to put a kid under that type of pressure at the start, going to a club like North Melbourne, which in a lot of ways was, in turmoil. Their coaching, wasn't stable. They'd had a couple of new coaches after Brad Scott had left. And I really think that Jason Horne-Francis on the weekend in particular and all the fanfare around it, what Kane Corns, and whether it's Kane Corns or David King, and they both wear their different hats. Kingy's obviously North Melbourne and Corns is Port Adelaide. But if I was Jason Horne-Francis, I would have left North Melbourne as well.
Really?
100% you would leave. Why would you be? You're the number one pick. Clearly people are talking about, whether he had an ice bath or not. What a load of shit. I mean, whether you have an ice bath or not, like, you don't leave a club. We've got players at North Melbourne right now, in Taron Thomas that has been through the absolute ringer, but he's got plenty of talent. So North Melbourne aren't throwing him out with the so-called bathwater or an ice bath, are they? It's got nothing. I think that Horne-Francis left North Melbourne purely because they were in trouble off the ground. They signed a coach, Alistair Clarkson, by the way, which is, I think he's doing a great job. But at the time, he's under an investigation. So whether he was going to coach or not, they had people that wanted to spill the board. You had people that wanted to kick Sonia Hood off the board and out of the presidency. All of these things were going on behind the scenes. And if I'm his manager, I'm saying, let's get out of here. Let's get to a little bit of stability. Let's get back and have your family support in Adelaide. So as far as him making the decision to leave, I have no problem with.
Yeah, it's really surprising. I find that surprising. He doesn't have an obligation, even as a young player, to. I mean, he's got a contract for 2 years. Your
career's too short to have an obligation. Loyalty went out of this game a long time ago. It really did. And you just don't know what's around the corner, whether he gets a serious injury or a knee. I mean, once again, he didn't know what was going on at North Melbourne. So all of the talk around, whether he's going to reach his ability and how good a player he is and why he left North and all of this, which has now created the booing, not only from, or I guess, a little bit of discomfort from North Melbourne supporters. I think a lot of North Melbourne supporters were happy to see him go. I think they thought, well, okay, if the young kid's going to be happy. So this isn't about North Melbourne supporters now. It's turned into everyone else. And I think the reason why it's turned into everyone else is because of people like Kane and because of people like David, who has his North hat on, and now all of a sudden, it's tit for tat with these two. It's got nothing to do with these. Well, it has now, because people are now booing this kid because they're going against not Jason Horne-Francis. I think they're going against Kane Corns more than Jason Horne-Francis. What that kid did on the weekend, I think, is nothing short of amazing. For a 19-year-old to be completely out of sorts in 3 quarters. I can't think of too many 19-year-olds, including Dangerfield, including Selwood, including all these players that started their career, including Chris Judd, because Chris Judd and Selwood and these guys came straight into the competition and they were good players straight away. Sam Walsh is another one. Good player straight away. Consistent. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter. I haven't seen too many 19-year-olds grab a game by the scruff of the neck and win it for his footy team like he did on the weekend. That is as big a tick that I could give any kid in the competition, because what that says is he can overcome adversity within a game. If you can do that, imagine what you can do when you put it all together. I mean, he's going to seriously win a lot of games for the Port Adelaide Footy Club. So on that side of the fence, I totally agree with Kane Corns. He's going to be an absolute superstar if he gets all his ducks in a row, pardon the pun, off the ground, and if he trains hard, and from all reports he's doing all of that. If he gets all of that right, he's going to be a star, and he proved that on the weekend. So well done to Jason Horne-Francis. And the booing, you know what, the booing will remain while ever they think they get under his skin. If he continues to do what he did on the weekend,
it'll die off pretty quickly.
It'll die off pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
If he can keep grabbing games by the scruff of the neck and showing the opposition, okay, boo me. By the way, good players have been booed forever and a day. Tony Lockett got booed. Greg Williams got booed. There's plenty of superstars that get booed from week to week. I might have got a boo here and there as well. So, you know, I am a fan. I think he has gone through the ringer. I think fans are entitled to do. The booing part of it, I think the commentary around it now has to probably stop. And I know I'm talking about it, but I'm being a positive. I'm being a positive person rather than a negative Nancy around Jason Horne-Francis. Well done, young man. Keep up the good work. You know what? Next week, string a half together. The week after, maybe 3/4. The week after that, maybe a 4-quarter effort. But his form prior to was pretty good. So I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I know it's a topic we'll probably discuss further with your special guest today, who we'll touch on a little bit later. That whole discussion around, do you wrap your arms around a player versus the discipline and what's required to be a professional. But we'll leave Jason Horne-Francis for now. Gather round, we've just finished. You were actually in Adelaide. I've seen a whole lot of views on Gather Round, and most of them have been positive. Those that have been there. For me, I had a few question marks. You know, was Essendon Melbourne enhanced by being in Adelaide? Was Collingwood St Kilda enhanced by being in Adelaide? I wonder whether they weren't. But from what I understand, it was a pretty amazing atmosphere being over there on the Thursday and the Friday for you.
At the end of the day, we play on a ground, and all of our grounds, unlike any other sporting code in the world, we have grounds that are different sizes with different lengths, different widths, all sorts of stuff. But both sides have to put up with obviously that. I thought it was a massive success. I love South Australia. I love Adelaide. I love their passion about football. I love their produce. I love everything about their produce is absolutely magnificent. And I had my doubts before going over there on Thursday. I thought, you know, how many people are going to go to these other games? Of course they're going to go to the Crow game and the Port Adelaide game. But
is there an unfair advantage for them, by the way? I thought Adelaide was a shoo-in on in that first match just because it'd be so up for it.
Oh, turn it up. A shoo-in. Well, I'd tell you what, you're better than me because I tipped Carlton. I didn't think they were a shoo-in at all. I think what Adelaide have shown is how much they've improved. But in terms of, you know, the way they embraced it, they just love their footy. They really do. And what it showcases, what a beautiful city it is. Still gets a bad rap, Adelaide. It really does. And I think a lot of people travelled. I think now that people understand how good it was and the carnival atmosphere and the way and everything that they had set up for the kids to get involved and all that interactive stuff, I thought was superb. And I got around it. I was only there for a day and a half. I didn't want to get caught up in the produce too much over there, so I got out. But I loved it. I thought it was a massive success. I thought the majority of the games were really good games. They all went, you know, a few of them went down to the wire, so including the last game that we saw. So I thought it was a massive success. And I know everyone's saying, well, why have they signed up for the next 3 years? Well, I'll tell you why. Because Adelaide people will embrace it. And I'm sorry, but I'm not sure it's going to work as well in other cities.
No, I agree. It's not. I don't think it's like that in Sydney or Brisbane.
I don't think so.
Perth, you've got the time difference issues for TV and that sort of thing.
And you've got the travel.
Yeah.
There's a long way to go. So sorry to Perth, but that's a long way to go. And plus, they've wanted to be their own country for a long time.
Just on Adelaide, now I know you're still pretty big on the function scene and can be lucrative these sort of weeks, can't they? Who would really clean up in this sort of week with the.
There's plenty of people that.
You're getting nervous.
When you say clean up, you're like when it was like an atmosphere like no other. I mean, everyone went there and did their broadcast. I mean, for instance, if we started this a week ago, we would have been over there doing this in Adelaide, and talking.
We've got the budget for that, have we?
Hey, have we got the? So it really, I don't think that. I don't think there's too many people that go down that path that you're talking about, but there would have been there were a lot of functions over there, including a very exclusive one that the AFL had, which I know that a very, very high profile Crow, and arguably the highest profile Crow, Mark Rasciuto, never got an invite to. Being a Brownlow medalist, he has a grandstand named after him and never got an invite to the biggest show during Gather Round over there. And you had a few dingbats at that function, let me tell you, and a few people. I'm not sure how they got the invite, but Mark Rasciuto
get the sense he's not that happy.
Was not that happy. Talk about invites to, he's not happy about not being invited.
There is one serious topic I wanted to touch on with you today, and that is concussion. It's been a whole lot of players now who are seeking compensation. The latest is Gary Ablett Snr. He's sued the AFL, Geelong and Hawthorn. He says he's really struggling through his lawyers. You've been pretty vocal about the Players Association and the support that they maybe haven't provided the players post-footy, but is this a little bit different because we're dealing with some new information? How do you sort of view this concussion?
The concussion? Yeah, look, it's a serious issue, and I have no doubt, and I don't devalue what any of the players that have put their hand up and said that they are having the effects of concussion after their career and it's affected their life. I don't question that whatsoever. What I do say, and this is in defence of the AFL, and people will be surprised at that, in defence of the AFL and also the Players Association, that is I think that they've moved in accordance with the science. Now, that's not to say that they don't have a case to answer with this class action that's going on at the moment. In saying that, though, that as the science has improved and as we've found out more and more about what concussion does to players after their career and how it affects their afterlife, then I think that they've moved in accordance with that. So for me, it's a difficult one. I actually would love to. I might go and have a concussion test myself. Maybe I can, tongue-in-cheek, blame some behaviour on it. But
it might be a stretch, that one.
Yeah, I think that might be a stretch. But it is difficult. Obviously, Gary Ablett Snr. Once again, I don't say that he doesn't feel the effects of concussion. But what I do say is that when he was playing, which is in the same era that I was playing, I think that the AFL and the doctors, let's not forget our club doctors, and we had one of the very best. We had Harry Unglick. Harry Unglick would not send you back on the field if he didn't think, if there was science at the time to suggest that you couldn't go back on the field. So we're talking about one of the most respectful, you had John Reid. There's some great doctors, and they're great doctors at clubs now, but those guys would never send you back out. Never. And that's including, I've got to go and have you talk about concussion, and I'm not suggesting that a shoulder replacement is the same to concussion for all those people out there that get on their high horse and say, oh, well, he thinks concussion's the same as a shoulder. No, it's not. But it's a serious thing that you have to have in your afterlife. And what I mean is by that, so if I knew when I was 25, 26 and I was having shoulder reconstructions, at the age of 51, I'd have to have a shoulder replacement. Would I go back out there after 10 weeks after having that operation? Absolutely I would. If I thought that when I got hit really hard in a preliminary final against Brisbane in 96 or 99, and I felt a little bit dizzy after the game, yet once again the science wasn't around to suggest that I should miss a week, would I go back out and I had after effects now? Once again, this is me personally talking. Would I go back out on the ground to play in that grand final? Absolutely I would.
So players need to be safe from themselves to a degree, don't they?
Yeah, you do. And there are players, and we're seeing now, and what I want to say, because we are, part of this podcast is about, like I said, about men's health. And what I will say is that they do have to, because there are players that will put their hand up, and we're seeing more and more now players in the competition that are putting their hand up and saying, I need a week off. I need 2 weeks off. I can't deal with this anymore, and I need to go and have I need to have a rest mentally. This isn't a physical thing, as in a broken bone, so to speak, because that's very easy to know. When that's healed, okay, bang, you're back out. But the mental health side, I think, is certainly a massive issue, and I think we're now, because of the science and because we're putting our hand up more and saying I've got a problem, I'm not feeling great. There might be something going on at home. There might, you don't know what's going on, and that's why you've got to be very careful about being critical of young players, of old players, of anyone for that matter within the game when they're going to be splashed on the front page of the paper or on the back page or in the middle page or in the gossip column. By the way, it's been a week since I've been in it, so I'm pretty happy. Let's hope that lasts.
Let's hope that continues
a little bit longer.
Just on a lighter note with Gaz, as someone who loves the game, and I've watched this from afar, you see it up close. You were part of Club 10 with Gary Ablett Snr. That was a management group under Ricky Nixon, an iconic photo that I always think of when I think of you two guys. It was you and Gaz and who else was there? Tony Lockett and Jason.
Did we ruin Ricky Nixon, or did Ricky Nixon ruin him? No. The Chook's going well. He's look. He was before his time, Ricky Nixon. What he did for AFL football. Every player that plays AFL footy should bow to Ricky Nixon. He stood up to the AFL. The reason why players can wear Nike boots now and not some other brand. Like if the club's sponsored by Diodora, then you're able to wear Nike because Ricky Nixon stood up to the AFL. And he went and Andrew Demetriou, when he got to the Players Association, Ricky Nixon had a lot to say. Club 10 all got behind that decision. And then we know where Andrew ended up. He ended up the CEO of the AFL. So he did a lot for the game in so many aspects. That Club 10 was a copycat version of the quarterback club from the NFL. So Ricky sort of went over there, saw what they could do as a collective, and how they could, help brands. I think we were on the Milo cans, Nestle. We all had our pictures on those cans, and Gary Ablett was obviously a huge part of that. You had Tony Lockett, you had Gary Lyon, Jakovic, Modra, Gavin Wanganeen. I mean, the list goes on. It was the absolute most marketable, best players in the competition at the time, and Gary Ablett Sr. was a big part of that.
Now, as part of this podcast, we're going to have some ongoing segments that we've been working on and we're going to integrate over the next few weeks. One of those is Mark My Words, and we will have a little stinger for that at some point. But for the moment, I'm going to hold you to a few things, and normally we'll look a bit further into the crystal ball, into the future. But this one, I want to focus on one game, and that is the biggest game of the next round, Anzac Day. The first time since 2000, both Essendon and Collingwood have been in the top four going into this game. Collingwood have got a lot of injuries. On the surface, you'd say the Pies are the better team, but what do you think about this game?
You know what I think about the game? I have a lot of envy around this game, to be honest with you. I hate the fact that Collingwood and Essendon are the only two teams that can play on that special day, and it is the most special day on our calendar. It really is, and it's just what Kevin Sheedy has done. Let's not forget, Kevin Sheedy introduced this to the AFL and said this is what we should be doing, and what a celebration it is now of our Anzacs. I'm very envious because I tell you what I've done. I've gone down and I've gone through my career, and I had at least 5 BOGs against Essendon, had at least 5 BOGs against Collingwood. So I worked out I'd have 10 Anzac Day medals if I'd played against those clubs on that day.
I reckon you got a selective memory about playing Essendon.
Please. They were my bunnies.
I feel like they wiped you a few times, didn't they?
They were my buddies, the Bombers, and you know it. Being a Bomber
Didn't they beat you by
supporter.
20 goals in a qualifying?
Yeah, I didn't play in that. Oh, no, I did play in that game.
You were there.
But that was a final, by the way. No, they were my bunnies. But no, it's a great day on the calendar. I can't wait. You're right, because it is, they're both in pretty good form right now. So
who wins?
That's been a long time. Well, I trust Collingwood more than I trust the Bombers. So I'd be going down the Pies path if I was you.
Now, as I'm an Essendon supporter, I would say they've got a player that should do a job on Nick Daicos. I'm not saying that he'll stop him or anything like that. Will Snelling, just a small forward who's a pressure forward. No one's gone to Nick Daicos. If Essendon has that type player, they showed last week with Will Setterfield on Clayton Oliver, would you be sending someone to play that more defensive role on him?
It's a good question, but Nick Daicos is another one that's, I guess, been in the news a lot, and some people are saying, how good's this kid? Is he the best second-year player that we've seen of all time? And what I'll say is that there's been some very good players in their second year, and I could reel off a number of them. And obviously Selwood and Judge and Greg Williams, and there's a heap of players that were unbelievable very quickly. Modra was pretty good in his second year of AFL footy as well. But what I'll say is Collingwood are using him in a very smart manner. He's playing off a halfback flank. He's taking all the kickouts. That's not to say that he's not an unbelievable player and he's winning his one-on-one contest and he's winning contested footy and all of that. But the kid is playing off a halfback flank. He's not in the heat of the battle. He's not playing midfield right now. So the way Collingwood are using him is unbelievable. The kid has that much talent. He's got more talent in his left finger than most people have in their whole body. Like he's an unbelievably good player. But let's not forget that how many halfback flankers have won the Brownlow? I know everyone's talking about the Brownlow. How many have won the Brownlow?
Jeez, you've really thrown me under the bus here.
Well, I tell you how many, not many. Okay, so I remember obviously Wayne Ganeen from a back pocket, Brad Hardy also from a back pocket. How, I don't know, either of those from a back pocket, but they did. So could he win it off a halfback flank? Of course he could, but history says in recent times that halfback flankers, albeit he's getting a lot of it, remembering he's taking all the kickouts as well, Anton, but he's certainly a super player and a special player.
Well, Wayne, I can't wait to continue this conversation with you over the coming weeks. We've got a special guest. We're hoping to have some big-name guests in the next few weeks. Your first one is Dennis Pagan. I'm sure that'll be very entertaining. We'll chat to you again soon.
Looking forward to it, Anton. And remember, tell your truth.
The truth hurts. The truth hurts.